The world tells you to chase more, wake up early, grind, hustle, outperform, outshine, outrun the doubt. But deep down, you feel it. The stretch, the weight, the hollow echo of winning without ever feeling full. Have you ever had a moment where the world clapped, but your soul stood quiet? Where you reached the goal, but it didn't feel like peace? Where everything looked right, but something inside whispered, "This isn't it." That whisper, that ache, that pause that lingers when the noise fades, it's not weakness, it's the beginning of clarity. Because this isn't just about doing more, it's about becoming less fragile. It's about learning to walk through fire and not let it burn the core of who you are. And this is where Stoicism begins. What if this wasn't just a video, but the moment everything began to make sense? If you're tired of just coping, if you want a way to live that doesn't crack every time life shifts. This video is not a lesson, it's a mirror. And if you stay through the end, you won't just learn Stoicism, you'll feel it settle in your bones. But before we go deeper, pause, scroll down and write, "I choose clarity." Not for me, not for likes, for Diju, you. Because when you name something, you claim it. Now, let me tell you a story. Once upon a very ordinary Tuesday, a man stood in front of his bathroom mirror. He had the house, the job, the schedule. He even had the morning routine everyone said would fix his life. But something was off. He wasn't tired, he was drained. Not from lack of sleep, but from a life that never asked him who he really was. He looked into his own eyes and realized he hadn't heard his own voice in weeks. Only tasks, only pressure, only expectations stacked like bricks, and underneath it all, a quiet voice asking, "When did I stop choosing?" The Stoics didn't live louder, they lived deeper. They didn't react, they responded. They didn't break when tested because they'd already chosen Weicho to belong before the test came. And this is that moment for us, that breath, that pause, that turning point you almost missed. Let's not miss it now. The rest is yours to carry. Now breathe, let's start. Lesson 1, stillness is power. The world moves fast. That's why you don't have to. These days, if you're not rushing, they think you're losing. If you're not hustling, they think you don't want it bad enough. If you pause, even for a moment, they call it weakness. But let me ask you something. When was the last time you did nothing and didn't feel guilty about it? When was the last time you slowed down? Not because you broke down, but because you chose to. The world rewards noise, but the soul, it only grows in silence. Stillness isn't laziness, it's positioning. It's stepping back so you can see, so you can think, so you can feel what's been screaming under the surface. You know what breaks most people? It's not failure, it's the weight of never stopping. They keep going until they forget where they were going in the first place. But the Stoics, they knew better. They didn't run harder. They stood deeper. They didn't get swept up in the chaos. They watched it pass. They trained themselves to be the anchor when everyone else drifted. Stillness doesn't mean nothing is happening. It means you've stopped outsourcing your motion to things that don't matter. It means you're no longer reactive, you're responsible. So don't chase what moves fast. Chase what stands strong, because strength isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a quiet man with calm eyes and a storm he's already tamed. Stillness is not what happens when the world calms down. It's what happens when you do, and that changes everything. You don't need more. You need less noise. Ever wonder why peace feels rare? Even when everything looks fine? It's not because you're broken. It's because you're drowning in noise. Every scroll, every ping, every headline, every voice telling you who to be, what to want, what to fix, and how fast you need to do it. You're not tired because you do too little. You're tired because you're filtering too much. Trying to separate truth from trend. Trying to hear yourself under the pressure of everyone else's volume. And that's why Stoicism works. It doesn't add more, it subtracts. It teaches you to close tabs in your browser, in your brain, in your life. It reminds you that clarity doesn't come from doing more things. It comes from removing what distracts you from the few that actually matter. Because here's the quiet truth. You already know what's important. You just can't hear it with all that noise in the way. So if you feel overwhelmed, don't add another hack. Don't chase another fix. Just step back, turn something off. Mute the world long enough to hear your own signal again. Stillness isn't passive, it's powerful. It's what happens when you stop reacting and start listening to what's been there all along. And if that sounds small, wait till you feel it, because the loudest breakthroughs in life start in a room where nothing moves except the truth inside you. They move fast. That's why you must move true. The world celebrates speed. The quicker you rise, the more they cheer, but no one tells you. Speed without direction just makes you lost faster. Everyone's running, chasing titles, deadlines, attention, validation. But most don't know where they're going. They just don't want to be the ones standing still. So they move, fast, loud, frantic, and call it ambition. But you don't need to match their pace. You need to protect your path. The Stoics weren't slow. They were precise. They didn't act less. They acted with intention. They knew something we forget. It's better to walk the right road slowly than run the wrong one proudly. Stillness isn't about doing nothing. It's about knowing when movement becomes escape, when action becomes distraction, when speed becomes an excuse not to feel. And the price? You get there, wherever there is, and feel empty. Because you ran so fast, you left yourself behind. So pause, ask yourself, is this movement or is it a mask? Is this urgency or is it fear dressed up as progress? Real peace doesn't come from getting there first. It comes from knowing you didn't betray yourself to arrive. Stillness is about moving true, even if it's not fast, even if no one claps, even if no one sees, because the moment you stop performing and start aligning, that's when you stop chasing time and start living it. And in that stillness, you become unshakable. People will ask, how do you stay so calm when everything's falling apart? They'll wonder how you don't panic, don't flinch, don't chase. They'll assume you're hiding something, but you're not. You've just learned something they haven't yet. You've learned that most chaos isn't outside, it's inside, in the mind that never stops spinning, in the heart that never pauses to heal, in the soul that forgets how to sit still. Stillness isn't a tactic, it's a training. It's the ability to stand without needing noise to prove you're alive. It's the quiet confidence that doesn't need attention. To feel worthy, it's the power of knowing your truth and not rushing to explain it. And when that becomes your rhythm, you stop reacting, you start responding, you stop breaking, you start holding. You stop chasing outcomes and start building character. Because the Stoics didn't seek applause. They sought alignment. They didn't need to be the loudest in the room. They just became the one everyone turned to when the room went silent. Stillness doesn't make you weak. It makes you unmoved. Stillness doesn't slow you down. It makes every step mean something. Stillness doesn't make life easier. It makes you stronger. And in a world that rushes, a soul that stands still becomes unshakable. Lesson 2. The discipline of self-respect. Saying no isn't rude, it's return. There's a moment when you say yes but feel something shrink inside. A nod, a smile, a silent agreement. That costs you more than anyone sees. It looks polite, it looks kind. But inside, it's betrayal. Not to them, to you. Self-respect doesn't disappear overnight. It erodes, one ignored feeling at a time, one boundary crossed because you didn't want to make it weird, one quiet voice inside you that says enough, but gets buried under shoulds, fears, and fake peace. The Stoics weren't soft, They were sharp, not loud, not rude, but firm. They knew that the world will take whatever you don't protect. Time, energy, dignity. And no one is coming to guard it for you. That's your job. Saying no isn't a rejection of others. It's a return to yourself. It's how you remind the world, I exist here too. Every time you stay silent to keep the room comfortable, you leave yourself out of it. Every time you say yes to avoid guilt, you pay in resentment later. It doesn't mean being cruel. It means being clear. It means letting your choices match your values, not your people-pleasing reflexes. The Stoics practiced discipline not just to train the body, but to teach the mind how to hold the line when comfort whispers, just give in. But here's the truth. If you keep bending, you'll break. If you keep pleasing, you'll disappear. So today, say no when it costs you too much. Say yes only when it feels like respect, not survival. Because the world doesn't need more agreeable people. It needs more whole ones. Every yes to them is a no to you. You say yes to help, to support, to not seem difficult, to be good. But every time you do it, at the expense of your peace. You're not just saying yes to them, you're saying no to you, no to your rest, no to your time, no to the quiet voice inside that's been whispering. Slow down. They're taking too much. And maybe they don't mean harm. Maybe they love you, maybe they just don't see it. But if you don't show them the line, they'll keep crossing it. Because here's the raw truth. You're training people how to treat you. Every silence, every forced smile, every time you say, it's fine, when it's not. They believe you. So what do you want them to learn? That you're limitless, that your time isn't sacred, that you'll always rearrange yourself to make them more comfortable? No, that's not love. That's erasure. Self-respect isn't taught in a shout. It's taught in a pattern. When you choose rest without guilt, when you say no and don't rush to explain, when you let the discomfort sit without rescuing it. The Stoics didn't live to be liked. They lived to be aligned. They knew that not every battle needs to be fought, but some boundaries need to be held like armor. Quiet, calm, immovable. Because every time you say yes, just to keep the peace, you create a war inside yourself, and you lose again and again. So next time you're about to agree out of guilt, pause and ask, will I still respect myself after this yes? If the answer is no, then you already know what to say. You don't owe them softness that costs your soul. They'll call you cold when you stop breaking yourself to keep them warm. They'll call you distant when you stop making yourself smaller to make them comfortable. Let them call it whatever they want, because you know the truth now. Self-respect isn't loud. It doesn't argue. It doesn't explain. It simply refuses to shrink. You don't owe them the version of you that says yes with a cracked voice. You don't owe them the silence that steals your sleep. You don't owe them softness that costs your soul. You owe you the truth, the boundary, the standard. And if it feels unfamiliar, it's because you've spent years putting others first and calling it kindness. But from this moment forward, kindness includes you, respect includes you, peace includes you. So next time they say, you've changed, just nod, because you have. And the cost of not changing was you. So take this breath, take this shift, and hold it. Even if they don't understand, even if they don't like it, even if you walk alone for a while. Because the ones who truly see you will never ask you to abandon yourself to be loved. And that's the kind of love you'll never have to recover from. Lesson 3. The root of overthinking. The fear behind the thought is older than the thought. You don't overthink because you're careful. You overthink because you're scared. Scared of being wrong. Scared of choosing wrong. Scared of losing something you haven't even touched yet. The mind doesn't spin because it loves logic. It spins because it's protecting a pain you haven't named yet. That's why you don't just think once. You rehearse, you rewind, You repeat. You try to prepare for every reaction, every rejection, every outcome. And you call it being smart. But deep down, you know it's not clarity, it's control. Overthinking is your shield. It's how you try to feel safe in a world that feels like too much. But here's the quiet truth. No thought has ever saved you from what only courage can face. Stoicism. The Stoics knew this. They didn't let their thoughts rule the day. They questioned them. They cut through them. They brought them into the light. Because most of the time, you're not afraid of the thing itself. You're afraid of what it might mean if it goes wrong. You don't fear silence. You fear being forgotten. You don't fear mistakes. You fear being judged. You don't fear the decision. You fear the regret. But fear is just a signal. It's not truth. It's not a prophecy. It's just a bruise from your past asking if you're strong enough to not repeat it. And you are. You're not stuck. You're just tired of carrying thoughts that were never meant to be carried alone. So next time the spiral starts, don't fight it. Don't feed it. Just sit, still, present, and ask, what is this thought protecting me from? When you name it, it loses its grip because awareness doesn't erase fear, it untangles it, and that's where overthinking ends and ownership begins. You don't need another answer, you need to trust one. Let's be honest, you don't lack answers. You've read the quotes, watched the talks, heard the advice again and again. You know what to do, but knowing isn't the problem. Trusting is. Every time you decide, a whisper kicks in. What if it's wrong? What if they leave? What if you regret it? So you delay, you overthink, you shrink into analysis and call it caution. But caution without action is just a clever disguise for fear. Because deep down, you're not waiting for clarity. You're waiting for certainty, and that never comes. There's no perfect plan, no choice without risk, no path that guarantees safety and self-respect at the same time. So here's the raw truth. At some point, you have to choose. Choose the risk, choose the path, choose the you want to become, and move. The Stoics didn't worship comfort, they worshiped clarity. And clarity isn't about having all the answers. It's about aligning with one and carrying it through. Even when it's hard, even when it's messy, even when your heart beats faster and your palms sweat. Still, you choose because you finally understand. Not choosing is the most dangerous choice of all. It leaves you stuck in your head while life keeps moving without you. It robs you of growth while pretending to protect you. But the truth is, it's not more thinking you need, it's more trust. Trust in your gut, trust in your growth, trust in the you who already knows what's right and just needs a little silence to hear it. So today, don't chase a better answer. Don't scroll for another quote. Just breathe and back the truth you've been carrying all along. The thoughts are loud, but they're not you. Some days the noise in your head is so loud, it drowns out your own voice. The spiral starts before the sun even rises. What if I mess this up? Did I say too much? Do they still care? And just like that, you're not here. You're not present. You're stuck in the stories your mind keeps writing. But here's what the Stoics understood, what modern minds forget. You are not your thoughts. You're the space that watches them, the one that gets to choose which thoughts to keep and which to let pass. But when you never pause, when you never breathe, you start believing every thought is real, every fear is valid, every doubt is you, but it's not. It's just noise, echoes of past pain, old programs, voices you never asked for, replaying on autopilot. And the more you engage, the more power they take, until one day, you stop trying, you stop showing up, you stop trusting yourself, not because you failed, but because you never questioned the narrative. So what do? You go back to the root. Pause the scroll, close the tabs, turn off the noise, sit, let the thoughts flood in, and don't fight them. Just observe. See how quickly they change, how irrational they sound when spoken aloud, how 90% of them come from fear, not fact, because once you see it, you can free it. And you'll realize the loudest thoughts aren't always true, they're just the ones you fed the most. So stop feeding the ones that shrink you and start listening for the one that's been quiet, but steady, the one that whispers. You're not broken, you're just buried. The world doesn't need your certainty, just your presence. You've been told, figure it out first, then show up. Be sure, be ready, be perfect. So you wait, you overthink, you disappear into preparation, but never actually step in. You think the world wants the perfect you, but it doesn't. It wants the real you, the one who's unsure, but still shows up, still tries, still listens. Because presence beats perfection every single time. The Stoics didn't walk into rooms with all the answers. They walked in with clarity, of self, of direction, of center, not because they knew everything, but because they knew themselves. And that's all anyone ever needed from them. You keep chasing certainty, like it's a badge of safety. But most of life is uncertain. People leave, plans shift, emotions change, and if you wait for all of it to make sense before you move, you'll miss what matters most. Clarity doesn't come from more thinking, it comes from doing, from stepping in, from breathing through the unknown, and staying anyway. So if the thoughts start swirling, if your mind says you're not ready, you might fail, they might judge. Answer it like this: maybe, but I'm here anyway. That one sentence breaks the loop. It anchors you to the present, the only place power ever lives. Not in control, not in prediction, not in perfection, just in presence. That's where the Stoic lives, and that's where you return. The mind is a tool, not a leader. Your mind is powerful, sharp, endless, loud, but it was never meant to lead. It was meant to serve, to help you plan, to help you build, to help you see options clearly. But when fear takes the wheel, your mind stops being a tool and becomes a trap. One thought becomes 10 become a storm, and suddenly you're not living, you're looping. The Stoics saw this early. They trained the mind like a muscle. They knew, if you don't master your thoughts, they'll master you. So they paused, they questioned, they wrote things down, they faced the worst case, then walked through it calmly. Because nothing clears the fog-like action, and nothing protects your peace like remembering. You are not your thoughts. You're the one who notices. You're the one who decides. So the next time your mind spins a fear, don't believe it blindly. Ask, is this thought useful or just familiar? Most loops aren't logic, they're habit, and the moment you see them, you can step out. Let your breath guide you back. Let your presence pull you home, because the mind is fast, but your soul is wise. Let the mind support your movement, but let clarity lead it. You don't have to think less, just believe less of what doesn't serve you, and when your mind tries to take over again, remind it. You're not the captain, you're the compass. I choose the direction. Lesson 4, the cost of control. When control becomes a cage, it starts small. A plan here, a routine there, a way to make life feel safer. You call it structure, discipline, being responsible. But little by little, you stop letting life move. You start gripping too tight, and what once felt strong starts to feel stiff, because control feels good, until it doesn't, until one thing goes wrong, and it all unravels, until someone changes their mind and you fall apart. You thought control would protect you, but now you realize it's the thing that's breaking you. You overthink every step, you micromanage every emotion, you try to predict every outcome before you allow yourself to breathe. But the Stoics knew, the more you chase control, the more you lose peace. And Denise, they taught us to prepare, to act, to lead, but not to cling, because nothing you grip too tightly can breathe. Not a relationship, not a dream, not even your own mind. And maybe that's why you're tired. Not because you've done too much, but because you've tried to hold too much. Too many expectations, too many what-ifs, too many things that were never yours to control in the first place. So what if you let go? Just a little, not of effort, but of outcome, not of care, but of needing everything to go your way. Let life move around you. Let people be who they are. Let the moment surprise you, because when you stop holding so tight, you make room for something stronger. Trust. And trust doesn't make life perfect. It just makes it possible to live without breaking every time something shifts. And that's what control was never strong enough to give you. You can't heal in a prison you built yourself. You think the control is helping you, but really, it's hurting you. You built the routine, you set the rules, you made the checklist, and now you're trapped inside it. Every step must be perfect, every moment must be useful, every emotion must be managed, hidden, or explained. But healing doesn't happen under pressure. It doesn't bloom under surveillance. It grows in space, in stillness, in imperfection, in the quiet surrender of I don't have to fix everything to be okay. But when you control too much, you leave no room for that. You become the guard, the prisoner, and the builder of the cage. The Stoics didn't find peace by dominating every detail. They found it by deciding what mattered and letting go of the rest. You don't have to control how others see you, how fast you heal, how the world unfolds. You only have to hold your frame, your standard, your center. The rest, it moves. It always does. So if you've been stuck in the same thought, same routine, same fear, ask yourself, is this protecting me or is this imprisoning me? Because the walls you build for safety can become the very thing that keeps your peace out. Let go, just enough to breathe, just enough to feel again, just enough to remember. You don't have to be perfect to be free. You just have to be honest about what you no longer need to hold. Surrender isn't weakness, it's wisdom. We're taught to hold on, to fight, to push, to never let go, even when it hurts, because letting go looks like giving up. It looks like failure, like weakness. But the Stoics saw it differently. They didn't surrender to escape. They surrendered to stay aligned. Because what good is holding onto something that's holding you back? What's the point of control if it costs you your calm? Sometimes the strongest thing you'll ever do is release. Release the outcome. Release the need to be right. Release the illusion that everything depends on you. Because it doesn't, and it never did. You've carried too much, for too long, for too many people. And the world, it didn't clap for your effort, it just expected more. But you're not here to be endlessly productive. You're here to be present, to feel, to move, to live from center, not tension. And that kind of living requires surrender, not to the chaos, not to the fear, but to the truth that peace isn't earned through control. It's found through trust. So today, let go of the version of you that's always in battle. Let go of the armor you wear in every room. Let go of the lie that rest must be earned and return to what's real. Your breath, your ground, your stillness. Because surrender isn't quitting, it's wisdom. It's knowing where your power ends and where your peace begins. Control makes you look strong. Letting go makes you feel it. Control looks powerful. It looks sharp, put together in command, but it's often a mask, one we wear to cover the fear beneath. Fear of being hurt, fear of being seen, fear of being out of control. Again, so we hold it together, tight, polished, perfect, but underneath, we're exhausted. Not because we're weak, but because we never rest. We're too busy holding the frame, too busy being strong. But true strength, it doesn't need to perform. It doesn't need to prove. It doesn't need to control every outcome just to feel safe. The Stoics understood this. They didn't seek strength in domination. They found it in detachment, not coldness, but clarity, not passivity, but poise. Because the moment you stop trying to hold it all is the moment you finally feel how strong you've always been. Letting go isn't weakness. It's the moment you realize you never had control anyway, only the illusion of it. And in that moment, you exhale, you soften, you begin again, not as someone who's got it all together, but as someone who's grounded enough to not need to. That's the power they can't take, because it doesn't come from the outside. It comes from the you who no longer needs to grip. So when life moves, don't panic. When people shift, don't chase. When plans fall apart, don't shatter. Just stand still, soft, sure, because control might make you look strong. But letting go, it makes you feel it, for real. You don't need control. You need clarity. You've been told to take control of your life, your schedule, your emotions. But here's the truth. They rarely say out loud. Control is often just fear. Wearing a suit. You grip hard because you're scared of what happens if you let go. But the Stoics didn't chase control. They chased clarity. They knew that peace doesn't come from locking everything in place. It comes from knowing what's truly yours and what never was. Your thoughts, yours to shape, your actions, yours to choose. But outcomes, people, the world, never yours to hold. So what if instead of controlling every turn, you got clear on where you're going? What if instead of managing every reaction, you held your own response with integrity? What if instead of fixing everything, you trusted yourself to stand when things fall apart? Because that's the shift, not power over life, but power within it. You don't need to be rigid. You need to be rooted. You don't need to control everyone. You just need to know yourself. That's what makes the Stoic different, not their stillness, but the source of it. So breathe deeper, grip softer, walk lighter, and ask, what can I control that actually matters? If the answer is me, then you already have everything you need. The rest, let it move. You're steady enough now to move with it. Lesson 5, the art of waiting. Sometimes power looks like patience. We live in a world that worships speed. Do more. Get it now. Don't wait. But there's a cost to moving fast all the time. You stop listening. You stop seeing. You stop feeling what the moment is trying to show you. The Stoics didn't rush. They watched. They waited. They let time do what force never could because they knew. Some things only become clear when you stop chasing clarity. You're not behind. You're not late. You're just standing in a season that's still unfolding. And no amount of rushing will ripen it faster. You want the answers. You want the next step. You want the peace. But peace doesn't come from pushing harder. It comes from waiting without losing your center. That kind of waiting, it's not weak. It's a quiet strength. A discipline few have, to sit in uncertainty and still breathe, to hold your course when nothing feels certain, to stay present when everyone else is sprinting toward distraction. This is the art of grounded stillness. This is where you meet yourself without the noise. So if you're here, stuck, unsure, restless, you're not failing, you're being called to learn something deeper. Patience is power without tension. And when you master that, you won't need to chase timing. You'll become the kind of presence that timing finds. Life moves in seasons, not speed. You've been measuring life in hours, days, months, but life doesn't move on your timeline. It moves in seasons. Some are fast, some are quiet, some feel like everything is breaking, and some, they feel like nothing is happening. But don't confuse stillness with stagnation. Don't confuse delay with denial. The Stoics knew just because something doesn't bloom today doesn't mean it's not growing, because roots grow in silence, strength builds in stillness, and clarity. It takes time. But we want to force it. We want results. We want confirmation. We want proof before we trust the process. But life doesn't give you guarantees. It gives you signs. And if you're too busy rushing, you miss them. The person you're becoming, you won't see it on a chart. You'll feel it in how you pause before reacting, in how you choose not to chase, in how you no longer need to explain your silence. That's growth. That's movement. That's alignment. But you'll never feel it if you only measure progress in loud, visible wins. Some victories happen in the dark. Some seasons are meant to test your patience, not your speed. So the next time you feel stuck, unseen, behind, remember, you're not late. You're just deep in the season where your roots grow. Wait well, wait with strength, and trust that the season will shift when you are ready. Not all waiting is passive, some is preparation. We often think of waiting as doing nothing, but that's only true if you're asleep. The Stoics didn't wait passively, they waited with presence, because they knew time isn't just something to pass, it's something to practice. So while others fill the silence with noise, you sharpen your awareness. While others rush into action, you ground your intention. That's not stillness. That's power, waiting for the right moment to move. You don't rush the arrow before it's aimed. You don't wake the soil before the seed breaks open. So why rush your own unfolding? Right now, you may not see the results. You may not feel the shift. But something in you is reorganizing quietly, deliberately, like water shaping stone. This season, it's not lost time, it's not wasted energy, it's your training ground where you learn to hold discomfort, where you meet your shadows without panic, where you master the art of non-reaction. That's where Stoic strength is born, not in the win, but in the wait. So next time someone asks, "What are you doing with your life right now?" Don't flinch, just smile and say, "I'm preparing." Because the most dangerous person in the room isn't the loudest. It's the one who waits quietly, with clarity in their eyes. When nothing moves, everything inside you can. You look around, and nothing's changing. Same job, same people, same problems. You start to wonder, is it always going to be like this? But that's the trick of the external world. It fools you into thinking that change only counts when it's visible. But the Stoics knew. Sometimes the most powerful shift is invisible. When life gets quiet, when the wind stops, that's when the inner movement begins, because there's no more noise to distract you, no more busyness to keep you numb, no more excuses to avoid the truth. You finally hear the voice you've been drowning out, and it says, something has to change inside. Maybe it's how you talk to yourself, maybe it's what you tolerate, maybe it's the fear you've been disguising as discipline. And in that silence, you don't run from it. You face it. You start journaling again. You breathe slower. You stop lying to yourself about who you are and what you really want. The world thinks nothing's happening, but you know better. Because stillness, it's not the absence of growth. It's the place growth begins. So if you feel like nothing's moving, don't panic, ask deeper. What in mice finally ready to move? Because when the outside world quiets down, that's your chance to rebuild everything within. And when that shift happens, no one has to see it. They'll feel it. The way you walk, the way you pause, the way you no longer shrink to fit the room, not because the world changed, but because you did. Waiting isn't what holds you back. It's what holds you still. We're taught to fear the pause. Like if we're not moving, we're losing. But the Stoics knew. The stillest moments hold the deepest changes. When you wait with intention, you're not stuck. You're being shaped. Your patience, it's not passive. It's a silent vow that you won't rush what matters. You won't force what's sacred, because there's wisdom in not pushing the river. There's strength in sitting still while the storm passes through you. Waiting doesn't mean weakness. It means you've outgrown the need to be loud just to feel strong. So if life feels slow right now, if everything in you is asking, why hasn't it happened yet? Pause and ask back. Who am I becoming in the waiting? Because the real shift is already happening. Not in the outcome, but in the one who's learning how to hold their peace in the middle of silence. You are not late. You are not broken. You are not falling behind. You are learning to stand without noise, to trust without proof, to grow without applause. That is not nothing. That is everything. Lesson 6. The strength of detachment. Not everything deserves your grip. You held on because you thought that's what love meant. That's what loyalty looked like. That's what strong people do, right? So you stayed, you tried, you poured, and then you drained. You gripped harder, thinking it would make it stay. But all it did was break your fingers. The Stoics saw it for what it was. Attachment without clarity is just quiet self-destruction. You can love someone without losing yourself. You can care deeply without carrying what was never yours. Because when you grip everything, you lose everything. Your calm, your center, your sense of what's actually worth holding. Not every message needs a reply. Not every distance needs to be chased. Not every silence is yours to fill. Sometimes the strongest move is to let go, not in anger, but in honor. Honor for your own energy, honor for your own peace, honor for the line you drew so softly, then finally carved in stone. Detachment doesn't mean you don't feel. It means you no longer bleed for things that refuse to heal. And when they say, "Why are you different now?" you don't owe them a speech. You just smile and hold your frame, because not everything broken can be fixed, and not everything that stays deserves to. You are allowed to put it down. The memory, the need, the false hope that this time would finally be different. You are allowed to move on. With grace. That's not cold, that's clarity. And clarity, it holds more love than any grip ever could. You lose yourself when you try to hold what won't stay. You felt them slipping, so you held tighter, you gave more, explained more, bent more. But the more you gave, the less of you was left. And here's what hurts the most. It wasn't just that they left, it's that you lost yourself trying to make them stay. You turned soft, not out of peace, but out of fear. Fear of abandonment, fear of being alone, fear that if you let go, no one would choose you again. But listen, you don't need to be chosen by those who can't even see you. You don't need to be held by hands that shake every time you ask for truth. The Stoics never begged for what wavered. They stood still, whole and enough, and they let what stayed. Stay, what left, go. That's not detachment, that's dignity. You keep thinking if you just explain it better, soften a little more, prove your worth. They'll stay, they'll change, they'll see you, but here's the raw truth. If they needed to lose you to finally value you, then they never truly saw you to begin with. You are not a project, not a fixer, not a second draft of someone else's ideal. You are the whole page, the ink, the fire. So stop rewriting yourself to fit into people who don't even know how to read you. Let them misunderstand. Let them say you changed. Let them feel the absence of someone who gave more than she ever should have. Because you're not disappearing anymore. You're returning to the parts you abandoned, to the boundaries you kept erasing, to the peace that doesn't need permission. This is what real strength looks like. You walk away, not out of anger, but out of remembrance of who you were before you made yourself small. And that's the kind of detachment they never expect but always remember. Letting go isn't loss, it's space. They told you that letting go means giving up. They said walking away makes you weak. But here's what they don't understand. Letting go isn't about losing. It's about making room. Room for peace, room for breath, room for the version of you that doesn't flinch every time the phone buzzes. You've been holding so much just to feel enough. But what if you didn't need to hold it all? What if enough was what happens when you finally put it down? The Stoics let go not because they didn't care, but because they knew not everything deserves to be carried. You're not meant to drag broken things just to prove you're strong. You're meant to walk light, with your spine tall and your soul intact. You think letting go is the end, but really, it's the opening. It's the moment you clear the noise, the moment you start to hear yourself again, the moment the weight lifts and you whisper, "Finally, this is me." And it doesn't matter if they don't understand. It doesn't matter if they call you cold. You're not here to carry what confuses your peace. You're here to choose space, space to heal, to think, to stop explaining your worth in conversations that never deserved your truth. So let go. Let go without guilt. Let go without speeches. Let go and breathe, because what's meant for you won't need your grip, only your presence, only your alignment, only your peace. Let go and watch what finally has room to find you. The strongest people don't grip. They choose. You thought strength was about holding on through silence, through disrespect, through things that chipped away at your spirit. But the Stoics saw strength differently to them. Strength wasn't how long you endure. It was how clearly you choose. Endure, because staying when something steals your peace, that's not strength, that's self-abandonment. They didn't grip out of fear. They let go with purpose, because life is not a test of how much you can tolerate. It's a mirror asking you every day, what are you choosing? Are you choosing stillness or survival? Are you choosing truth or comfort? Are you choosing yourself or the image of being loyal? You can't grip and grow at the same time. You grip when you don't trust. But when you begin to trust yourself, your worth, your knowing, the grip softens. You stop asking, how do I keep this? And you start asking, does this keep me? That shift, that's when you know you're not operating from wound anymore. You're walking from wisdom, because real strength, it doesn't shout. It doesn't prove, it doesn't chase, it stands unbothered, unfolded, unshakable. The strongest people don't grip. They choose what to carry, what to walk away from, and most importantly, what to become. Real strength isn't in the grip, it's in the release. You thought you had to hold it together, to be strong, to endure, to protect, to prove. But here's what the Stoics knew. True strength isn't what clenches, it's what lets go without losing its shape. Letting go doesn't mean you lost. It means you've outgrown the version of you who needed that thing to feel whole. And that's evolution. It's when your silence becomes your answer, when your stillness becomes your frame, when your peace no longer asks for their permission. You don't need to grip to be real. You don't need to explain your boundaries just to feel heard. You only need this. Clarity. The clarity to know what's yours. The courage to let the rest fall away. And the calm to stand in that choice without trembling. So next time your heart tightens, your mind races, your hand starts to reach back, pause, and whisper back to yourself, I release this, not in weakness, but in power. That's how you end a pattern. That's how you teach peace to stay. That's how you remind the world, I don't need to hold everything. I only need to hold myself. Lesson 7. The power of disappointment. What breaks you, shows you. You didn't expect much, just the truth, just some effort, just the kind of care you were willing to give. But when it didn't come, when the silence stayed longer than it should have, something cracked, and in that crack, you didn't just feel hurt, you felt exposed, because disappointment doesn't just sting, it shows. It shows you who they are, and who they never intended to be. It shows you how much you've been giving, in places that were only taking. It shows you what part of your heart still believes that love means endurance. But the Stoics didn't fear disappointment. They welcomed it, not as pain, but as clarity. Because sometimes the only way to see clearly is to be let down. Fully, brutally, finally. It's not the betrayal that hurts most. It's the part where you realize you saw it coming and you waited anyway. That's not weakness. That's a heart that hoped too long. But now the weight is gone. The illusion is gone. The person you thought they were no longer blocks the truth of who they are. And that's where power returns. When you stop asking why they couldn't meet you there and start asking, Why did I stay where I wasn't seen? You're not broken. You're becoming, and disappointment, it didn't destroy you, it delivered you back to yourself. Disappointment isn't punishment, it's instruction. We take it personally, like we did something wrong, like their failure to show up means we weren't worth it. But the truth is simpler and sharper. Disappointment isn't the universe punishing you, it's life whispering. Look closer. Look at the patterns. Look at the silences. Look at the way you made excuses for what never matched your effort. It's not cruel, it's clarifying. The Stoics didn't beg the world to be fair. They didn't expect others to meet them where they weren't capable of going. They watched, they listened, and when the message came, even if it hurt, they didn't argue with reality. Because disappointment is a teacher. It teaches you where your boundaries were too soft, where your hopes were too loud, where your loyalty went blind. It teaches you how to hold back without shutting down, how to love without leaking, how to wait without wilting. And most of all, it teaches you to believe what you see, not just what you wish. You've been here before, the same ache, the same drop in your stomach, the same silence after you gave too much. Again. This time, don't rush to heal, don't race to forgive. Don't cover the crack too quickly. Let it sting, let it show you, because this isn't about what they did. It's about what you do with what you now know. And what you do next, that's where the pattern breaks. That's where the wisdom begins. That's where you begin, again. But this time, wiser, calmer, less afraid to choose yourself. You weren't too much. They were too little. They said you were too emotional, too intense, too much. But what they really meant was, you made me feel things I wasn't ready to face. And instead of meeting you with depth, they labeled your clarity as aggression, your honesty as drama, your boundaries as selfishness. But hear this, and never forget it. You weren't too much. They were too little to match your truth. Too little to stay when things got real. Too little to love you without conditions. That's not your flaw, that's your filter. The Stoics didn't lower their frequency to be understood. They stayed grounded, even when others drifted, because strength isn't loud. It doesn't need applause, and it definitely doesn't shrink to make others comfortable. Let them say, you changed. Let them say, you're too hard now. What they're really saying is, you stopped begging for my bare minimum. And you did, because you woke up, because you grew, because you finally saw that your pain wasn't proof you loved deeply, it was proof you were overstaying. So leave the table where love must be earned. Walk out of the rooms where your silence is more welcome than your soul. Not to hurt them, but to heal you, because the day you decided to stop breaking yourself for others, that's the day you began to belong to yourself, fully, fiercely, finally. The people who hurt you taught you what to never be. You looked up to them, trusted them, maybe even loved them, and when they dropped you quietly, carelessly, like you were nothing, you broke. But here's the truth they'll never say out loud. The ones who hurt you the most also handed you your greatest clarity. Clarity on what to never become. Clarity on how not to love. Clarity on the kind of silence that feels more violent than shouting. The Stoics never blamed pain. They studied it. They asked, what does this teach me about being human? Because you don't just grow from kindness. You grow from disappointment, from watching someone betray your trust and choosing to stay soft, from being shut out and still refusing to shut down, from realizing that what they lacked doesn't mean you have to lack it too. You'll be different. You'll ask more questions, listen longer, pause before reacting. You'll hold people without controlling them. You'll care without needing to be worshipped back. That's the beauty of disappointment. It can either harden you or awaken you. And this time, it woke you up, not into bitterness, but into balance. You don't want revenge. You want release. You want peace. You want clarity. You want the quiet strength of someone who has seen pain and decided to turn it into purpose. That's how the cycle ends. Not by becoming like them, but by rising above them. With love, with truth, with boundaries that don't bend. They taught you the sharp edge of pain. But you'll teach the world what it looks like to turn pain into power. They let you down, but you rose up. You could have stayed bitter, closed off, quietly collecting reasons to never trust again. But you didn't. You chose to rise. Not louder, not colder, just clearer. Because disappointment wasn't your ending. It was your mirror. It showed you where you gave too much, where you waited too long, where you needed someone to validate what you already knew. And when they didn't, you cracked. But you didn't collapse. You took your time. You rebuilt differently. You stood quieter, but taller. The Stoics didn't walk through life expecting perfection. They walked prepared to face reality, even when it hurt. And when it did, they didn't flinch. They didn't fold. They focused. And now it's your turn to stop asking why it broke and start asking, what did I find in the breaking? You found your boundaries, your discernment, your capacity to care without self-erasure. You realized the world won't always meet you where you are, but you can fully, fiercely, without apology. That's what disappointment gave you. Not just a scar, but a map, a way back to your standards, to your center, to yourself. Let it go, let it teach, let it mark the place where you stopped shrinking just to be accepted. They let you down, but you rose up. And that was the whole point. Lesson 8, the danger of shrinking to fit. You didn't get smaller, you just forgot your shape. It didn't happen all at once. You just stopped finishing your sentences, stopped asking for help, stopped wearing what made you feel bold, stopped saying no when something didn't feel right. Not because you changed, but because you thought, maybe this version of me is easier to love. And so, you shrank in voice, in volume, in vision. You lowered your brightness because theirs flickered. You softened your needs because they called them too much. You bent so much, you forgot where your spine started. But here's the part no one tells you. The people you shrink for never see you more clearly. They just get used to less of you. And the longer you stay small, the more you begin to believe that small is safer. That silence is peace. That low maintenance is love. But the Stoics never became invisible to be accepted. They didn't distort themselves just to be less confronting. They stood not to be loud, but to be true. Because shrinking may buy you approval, but it costs you yourself. You don't need to be easier to handle. You don't need to cut corners off your character just to fit in their small understanding of love. You were never too much. They were just too unwilling to meet someone fully alive. So start returning to your voice, to your opinions, to your fire. You didn't lose your power. You just buried it under layers of adaptation. And now it's time to unfold. Not for them, but for you. The smaller you act, the more they believe it's your size. They won't ask why you stopped laughing as loud, why your opinions got softer, why your goals got smaller, because people don't notice what you sacrificed to keep the peace. They only notice how comfortable they feel around you. And comfort, it isn't always kind. The truth is, the more you shrink to fit, the more they assume that's your actual size. And suddenly, you're not the one with dreams. You're the one who supports. You're not the one with voice. You're the one who lets things go. They stop checking in, stop asking, stop listening, because you trained them to think you don't need much. But inside, you're screaming in silence, because you want to be seen. Not as a helper, not as a mirror, but as a whole. The Stoics never shrunk themselves to fit a room. They brought their full presence, quietly but fully, because dignity isn't loud, it just doesn't apologize for existing. So if you've been shrinking, ask yourself, who are you trying to protect with your smallness? Them or the fear that if you stood in your fullness, they'd leave? And here's the truth. If they need you small to stay close, they were never meant to sit at your table. You are not here to disappear. You are not here to echo back their comfort. You are not here to fit. You are here to stand fully, sharply, without permission. Because the day you start showing up as you really are, that's the day you'll see who's ready to meet you there and who only loved your silence. You don't owe anyone a smaller version of yourself. You were taught to tone it down, to not be too loud, too confident, too intense, too ambitious. You learned to flatten your edges, to sand down the sharpness of your light so it wouldn't blind them. But here's the truth. You were never too much. They were just unprepared for your fullness. You don't owe anyone your dimming. You don't owe anyone your silence. You don't owe anyone the small talk version of a soul that carries oceans. The Stoics didn't fear presence. They didn't dilute themselves to be less intimidating. They let their stillness speak, and it was enough. You don't have to explain your dreams just to make them less uncomfortable. You don't have to downplay your wins to make others feel safe. Because when you shrink, you teach the world that your fullness is negotiable. But it's not. It never was. Let them adjust. Let them grow. Let them leave if they must. You didn't come this far to become invisible in your own life. You came to show up, to take up space, to exist without editing. So next time the voice inside says, maybe I should stay quiet, pause and say back, no, maybe it's time they listened. Because your light, it doesn't need approval, it needs room, and when you give it that, you don't lose people, you find yourself. When you stop shrinking, you start becoming. It's not about becoming louder or taking up more space than anyone else. It's about no longer apologizing for the space that was always yours. You don't have to perform to belong. You don't have to hide your edges just to be held. When you stop shrinking, you start standing. The Stoics knew your value isn't in how soft you are, but in how true you stay. They didn't vanish to make people comfortable. They became unmoved, so others could see themselves clearly. And you're remembering that your voice was never too much. It was just waiting for a space that could hold it. That your fire was never destructive. It just scared people who only knew how to sit in the dark. And that your presence doesn't need to be managed. It needs to be met. So let this be the moment you stop asking, is this too big? And start asking, is this finally me? Because the second you choose your wholeness over their comfort, you don't lose anything. You finally come home to your power, to your truth, to yourself. And that's the part no one can take, ever. Lesson 9, the weight of apologizing for who you are. And I'm sorry for being real. You say I'm sorry when you ask for clarity, when you need space, when you speak your truth a little too directly. You say it so fast, you don't even notice anymore. I'm sorry for the message. Sorry, I didn't mean to bother you. Sorry if that was too much. But were you really sorry, or were you just trained to feel guilty for existing outside someone else's comfort? Somewhere along the way, you were taught that kindness means shrinking. That softness means silence. The truth needs a filter to be palatable, but the Stoics didn't apologize for showing up with conviction. They didn't walk around waiting for permission to be fully awake, and neither should you. Every time you say sorry for being real, honest, clear, you chip away at the solidity of who you are. You tell the world, my needs are inconvenient, my boundaries are up for debate, my energy isn't worth holding space for. But it is, and the people who matter, they won't flinch when you speak without a disclaimer. They'll listen, they'll respect it, they'll meet you in your full form, so start noticing it. Every sorry that slips out when what you meant to say was, thank you for listening. This matters to me. This is who I am. Because you were never too direct. You were never too passionate, too complicated, too deep. You were just honest in a world that got used to pretending, and there is no shame in that. Only strength, quiet, grounded, unapologetic strength. So next time you feel that reflex rise, pause and ask yourself, am I actually sorry or just afraid to be seen? Every unnecessary apology is a vote against your voice. You don't just say, I'm sorry. You feed it with tone, with posture, with how you shrink your presence after every word. You text it when you're just being honest. You say it when someone crosses your boundary. You feel it. Even when you didn't do anything wrong, it becomes a habit, a reflex, a programmed response to just existing out loud. But every time you whisper, sorry, when you mean, I have a right to say this, you vote against your voice. And over time, that voice goes quiet. Not because it has nothing to say, but because it doesn't feel welcome anymore. The Stoics didn't flinch in their truth. They didn't dilute their clarity to be seen as nicer. They let their calm hold the message, not weaken it. So ask yourself, who taught you that being direct was rude? That setting boundaries was too much? That your voice should be packaged in apologies to be heard? Because the people who truly care, they don't need you to sugarcoat. They don't need you to shrink. They just need you to be authentic, not polished, not perfect, just present with full permission. So next time you say, I'm sorry for simply existing, catch it and say instead, I mean this. This matters. But I stand by this. Because the world has enough noise, what it needs more of is people who speak without begging for the right to be heard. And that starts when you stop apologizing for being who you are. You don't owe them comfort at the cost of your truth. You've spent years learning how to speak gently, how to soften your tone so no one feels offended, how to tuck your honesty inside little disclaimers so it doesn't sound too sharp. But here's the part no one teaches. Your truth doesn't need to be delivered like a gift. It needs to be delivered like a standard. The Stoics weren't unkind, but they didn't trade truth. Just to keep the room calm, they understood something simple and powerful. Comfort is temporary, but clarity, that stays. You don't have to be rude, but you do have to be real, because every time you hide behind politeness, you lie a little, not to them, but to yourself. And the more you lie, the more you feel disconnected from the one person you'll always live with. You. So let them feel a little discomfort if it's what the truth requires. Let them pause, let them shift, let them learn that you are not here to make them comfortable, you're here to be whole. Because peace built on pretending, that's not peace. That's pressure. That's walking on glass inside your own skin. You don't owe anyone a softer truth if it means cracking your spine just to keep the message palatable. You owe yourself this. A voice that doesn't flinch, a tone that doesn't beg, a self that doesn't disappear just to be accepted. So speak, not with anger, but with weight. Let your words land, let your eyes hold still, let your breath say, I mean this, even if it shakes the room. Your truth isn't dangerous. Their denial is. You've spent too long walking on eggshells, shrinking your words into something soft, something nice, something that won't make anyone shift in their chair. But the truth doesn't need to be violent, to be firm. You don't need to yell to be heard. You just need to stand in your truth like it belongs, because it does. The Stoics didn't flinch when reality spoke. They listened, they held it, they responded, not reacted. And you're allowed to say what's real, even if it shakes them, even if it cracks their illusions, because your truth is not the danger. Their denial is, you don't have to explain your worth every time you speak. You don't have to smile through your own erasure. You just have to live in a way that says, this is who I am, and I'm done apologizing for it. And when you do, you'll lose the wrong people, but you'll find something stronger. Your voice, your place, your peace. Let that be enough. Let that be loud, even in silence. Lesson 10, the myth of being whole again. Healing doesn't mean going back. You've probably said it. I just want to feel like myself again. But who is that? Really the version of you before the heartbreak, before the betrayal, before everything cracked? You think healing is about it returning. But healing was never about going back, because whole doesn't mean what it used to mean. It doesn't mean untouched. It doesn't mean unbroken. It means integrated. It means I've seen the dark. I've lived through the loss. I've stood in the aftermath, and I'm still here. The Stoics didn't chase who they were before. They moved forward with everything they'd learned, not in spite of it, but because of it. You're not trying to be who you were. You're becoming who you couldn't have been without everything you've survived. So stop saying you're not healed because you don't feel the same. You're not supposed to. Scars don't vanish. They settle. They teach. They remind you of the line you crossed and the strength it took to make it to the other side. You're not broken. You're becoming, not like before, but a year wider, wiser, and so much more real than you've ever been. So next time you hear yourself say, I miss who I used to be, pause and say, instead, I'm learning to love who I'm becoming. Because this version of you, this one isn't missing anything. This one is being built on truth, on depth, on everything that still breathes inside you, even when it hurts. You don't need to be shiny to be whole. Wholeness isn't clean. It's not pretty. It doesn't sparkle in the light. Sometimes it walks with a limp. Sometimes it stays quiet because the words just won't come. Sometimes it cries at things no one else notices and holds onto moments others forget. But that doesn't make you broken. That makes you alive. You're not a glass that cracked. You're the sea that stormed and kept moving. The Stoics never saw pain as something to be erased. They saw it as something to be shaped by, not controlled, but contained. You don't need to look healed to be healed. You don't need to smile every day to be making progress. You just need to stay present, to keep waking up, to keep breathing, even when it aches. Because healing isn't a return to innocence. It's a return to strength, a quiet strength, the kind that doesn't need to explain itself anymore. You're not behind, you're not late, you're not wrong for still carrying pieces of what tried to break you. That's not failure, that's memory. And memories don't mean you're stuck. They mean you felt deeply and you survived, so no, you don't need to shine. You just need to keep going. And every step you take with your scars and your shadows, that's not brokenness, that's courage, and it counts. You are not the person who fell. Yes, it happened. The breakdown, the night you couldn't stop shaking, the moment you lost them, or maybe you lost you. It cracked something inside. It left a bruise you still check for when no one's looking, but listen closely. That moment doesn't get to name you. You are not the one who collapsed. You are the one who got up. Quietly, without applause, with no one clapping, no one watching. The Stoics knew falling is part of forming, that no one walks this life untouched. The only question is, will you let the fall define you or refine you? Because pain is not your shape, it's your sharpening. So don't look at your past and see shame. See the place where you met your real strength. The you who crawled through silence, through doubt, through nights that felt endless. That version, that's the most alive you've ever been. Because survival isn't a trophy, it's a testament. You didn't just get through, you built through. So when you feel small, when you feel behind, when you feel like healing should be done by now, remember, you are not the one who broke. You are the one who kept going even when brokenness made more sense. And that's power most people never find. So hold it, Wear it, become it, because you're not here to return to who you were. You're here to become who only pain could reveal. The goal isn't to be the same again. It's to be unshakable. Stop asking, when will I feel like myself again? Start asking, who am I now that I've been through all this? Because healing isn't a reset, it's a rebuild. The Stoics didn't chase normal. They built rhythm, discipline, stillness, even when everything around them was loud, chaotic, on fire. You're not here to bounce back. You're here to become, to step into something wider, deeper, stronger than the version of you that broke. Because that version was built on ease, on what hadn't been tested yet. This one's been tempered by truth. The kind of truth that doesn't shake when people leave, the kind that stays upright when silence feels heavy. So stop wishing to go back. You don't belong there. You belong here, in this skin, this breath, this moment that says, I'm still standing. Not perfect, not spotless, but grounded in clarity, in depth, in a self that doesn't need to explain why it's changed, because change is not a flaw. It's the evidence that you're alive. So the next time you wonder why it still hurts, why you're not fully there yet, remember, maybe the goal isn't to be full, maybe it's to be true. And the more true you are, the less you'll need to return to a self that never really fit you to begin with. The lesson 11, the cost of waiting to be free. Freedom doesn't wait for permission. You've been holding your breath, waiting for the right moment, the green light, the sign, the someone who'll say, now you're allowed. But here's the truth. No one is coming to give you permission, not to rest, not to speak, not to leave, not to change. And the longer you wait, the deeper the cage builds itself inside your mind. The Stoics didn't wait for approval. They didn't ask the world, am I enough yet? They knew that freedom starts the moment you stop outsourcing your worth. So what are you waiting for? Someone to tell you it's okay to stop suffering, someone to nod before you choose peace, someone to validate the life you already know is suffocating you. That nod may never come, and if it does, it'll be too late. Because freedom has nothing to do with the door being unlocked. It has everything to do with whether you're ready to walk through it. And you've always had the key. You just forgot that you didn't need to earn it. You just needed to use it. So this is your wake up. Not with noise, not with hype, but with a question. What is it costing you to keep waiting? Every delay, it costs time, it costs energy, it costs years of your life you'll never get back. And for what? To be liked, to be safe, to avoid discomfort. There is no safety in staying stuck. There is only slow erosion of truth, of voice, of the self you were meant to be. So breathe, stand, say it with your posture, if not with your words. I don't need permission, I am free. Go and walk, even if you're shaking, even if it's quiet, because freedom doesn't shout, it moves. You weren't born to ask, you were born to choose. Somewhere along the way, you were taught to be polite, to wait your turn, to raise your hand before you reached for what you needed. But that lesson was never about peace, it was about control. And now, you still raise your hand in your own life. You wait, hesitate, second guess. You say things like, maybe later, maybe when they understand, maybe when the timing feels right. Idris. But every maybe is a chain you tighten around your own ankles. The Stoics never bowed to what was convenient. They chose what was necessary, even if it was hard, even if it was lonely, even if it meant walking alone for a while. Because choice is the mark of a free soul. Not how loud you speak, not how many people agree, but how deeply you own the direction of your life. You weren't born to petition for peace. You weren't born to ask for clarity. You were born to decide what matters, what ends, what begins, what stays, and what goes. And yes, It will shake people. Some will fall away. Some will call you cold. Some will resent the version of you that doesn't bend so easily anymore. Let them, because those who need you, small, were never loving the real you. They were loving your compliance. But now you choose, not with anger, not with pride, but with presence, with a quiet that says, I know who I am, I know what I need, and I don't owe the world an apology for that. You don't need to be loud to be clear, you just need to be done waiting, because the longer you pause at the edge of your own freedom, the more the old life starts to look like a home. But it's not, it's a loop, and you're not here to circle back, you're here to break it. The longer you wait, the heavier it gets. Freedom sounds light. Wings. Sky. A door swinging open. But the truth, freedom gets heavy when you don't claim it. Every not yet adds weight. Every maybe tomorrow is a stone in your chest. Every silence, where there should have been a boundary, is a grinding feeling in your gut. And you feel it, not in explosions, but in fatigue, the kind of tired that sleep can't fix. Because waiting is a tax. It takes your hours, your clarity, your fire. And for what? Approval, comfort, the illusion of harmony in a place where your soul doesn't fit. The Stoics didn't wait for permission to be fully themselves. They chose principles over approval, direction over delay. They knew. The longer you wait to be free, the harder it gets to remember what freedom even feels like. You start to adapt to the wait, to call it normal, to live hunched under dreams you no longer reach for. But just because you can carry it doesn't mean you should. You're not meant to be exhausted by your own life. You're not meant to cope with a version of you that never gets to breathe. You're meant to stand, to drop the bags. You were never meant to hold. And yes, people might stare. They might say you've changed. They might say you've become too much. Let them. Because the truth is, they were fine as long as your weight made their life easier. But now you're ready to walk light. Now you're ready to live loud even in silence. Now you're ready to trade exhaustion for aliveness. So drop it. The apology, the delay, the version of you that's always almost free. You don't need the weight to be worthy. You never did. You don't find freedom. You build it. It's not waiting at the end of a trail. It's not hiding in a sunrise. It's not something you stumble on when life finally calms down. Freedom isn't found. It's forged. Like muscle, like wisdom, like truth. The Stoics didn't speak of freedom as escape. They spoke of it as mastery, mastery over reaction, over ego, over everything inside that bends to noise and fear. And you don't get there by walking someone else's path. You build freedom by becoming unmoved in the storm, by choosing what's right, not just what's easy, by walking away when everything in you wants to stay, just to feel safe, by standing in your quiet, hard-earned clarity, even when it costs you company. Because every time you say, "This is what matters to me, and I will not betray it," you lay a brick, and one brick becomes a wall, not to keep others out, but to keep your soul intact. So stop searching for the perfect moment. Build the moment. Choose the standard. Set the line. Hold the boundary. Not because you're cold, but because you're done being at war with yourself. This isn't about rebellion. It's about returning to your center, to your stillness, to a version of you that doesn't flinch when peace feels too quiet. Because freedom is not loud. It's still, it's sharp. It's a whisper you no longer ignore. And when you hear it, you don't ask for it. You rise to meet it. Then you carry it quietly, daily, like armor beneath your skin. And no one can take it because no one gave it. You built it. That's yours now. Hold it like it matters, because it does. You made it here, not just through a video, but through a mirror. Maybe you didn't expect it to hit this deep. Maybe you thought it was just another voice talking about Stoicism. But what you felt, what stirred inside, that wasn't the script. That was you at recognizing your own reflection in every word. So pause, breathe, let this settle. And if any part of you whispered, "This is what I needed," then listen to that. You don't need to change overnight. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to walk with more clarity, more presence, more truth. And when the noise gets loud again, come back here, come back to the rhythm, to the silence that teaches what shouting never could. This isn't the end. This is a reset, a reframe, a quiet return to who you've always been beneath the noise. And if you're ready to, keep building that. One truth, one lesson, one breath at a time. We'll be right here waiting, still whole enough.